Greetings, kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to episode 2 in our Coteries of New York for Vampire the Masquerade drama that we are unfolding with. We're going to go ahead and continue right along and jump into this. Rest. Hunger is at the heart of a vampire's existence. To ignore it is to tempt the beast to take over in its desire to feed. To overindulge in feeding may threaten the masquerade, while staining what humanity you have left. In Coteries of New York, having high hunger is indicated by a progressively thicker, bloody frame around the screen, like the one you see now. As your hunger grows, so does this indicator. Your hunger may increase when you call upon your vampiric powers, or when you need to mend your wounds after a fight. When your hunger reaches the maximum level, you will receive a warning after you complete a piece of the story. Ignore it at your own peril. Some choices might only become visible if your hunger is high enough. Similarly, high hunger may block off some choices, as you will be able to see after pressing continue. Blocked off option. To decrease your hunger, you will need to feed. Whenever you see a feeding opportunity, you can take the risk to hunt and slake your hunger. You will need to keep the hunger at bay if you are to uphold the masquerade and survive the night that awaits you. You open your eyes. The bed isn't warm. The room is filled with artificial light from the ceiling. The Solia metal door is closed. The solid metal door. Normally, you'd stretch for a bit. On some mornings, you'd probably throw the quilt over yourself and snooze a moment longer. But that was before. The way you woke up now, you're fully conscious, no grogginess, nothing weighing you down, just the nagging need in the back of your head. Hunger. Not as severe as the last time, but unmistakably there. You get up. You open the door to the main room. A digital clock on the TV shows you the time, 9:04 p.m. You walk over to the blinds and retract them cautiously. The only light coming in is New York City's artificial nighttime luminescence. So, that's what your waking hours are going to look like now. You missed the sunlight already. You're seriously considering just walking out of the apartment and figuring this all out by yourself. But then you come back to the memory of Kadir's exotic sword being raised in the gallery. Maybe sticking around isn't that bad of an idea after all. You keep jumping channels for around half an hour, and then switching to streaming services. Almost as if the universe had a sense of irony, you catch True Blood in the flood of recommendations. The doorbell rings. It's Sophie. Good evening, Eric. Slept well? Like a dead man. Curious wording, but not far from the truth, I suppose. No use dwelling on it. I think you'll agree with time. You made the right choice yesterday. I can teach you many things about yourself, your blood, its desires, and its power. We will begin tonight. Are you hungry? Yes? I'm sure you are. Our kind always is. There's only one remedy: blood. The drinks we had yesterday at Elysium are not the usual way to slake your thirst. So, tonight I will assist you in your first foray into hunting. You need to learn to sense the kind of blood you desire, to understand how you can use the kind's vulnerabilities to your advantage. So, let me get this straight. We're predators and humans are prey. It's pretty grim. I know what you feel. I remember the notion. But you will inevitably grow beyond it. You need blood to thrive, but there are many ways to take it, some more humane than others. You will find that drinking moderate amounts of it regularly will keep the hunger and the whispers of the beast away. You might think yourself monstrous, but there's a balance to be found here. The kiss gives the kind pleasure. You might remember this from your own embrace. Some can even become addicted to the sensations. But if you do it right, they tend to misremember your feeding. After all, vampires do not exist. They are myths, fairy tales, and pop culture mainstays, correct? She gives you a sly, knowing smile. That is why the masquerade is so important, and even more crucial when you feed. Biting people leaves marks, right? And the victims remember your face. You shouldn't concern yourself with leaving marks. These are easy to conceal. You just need to bite carefully and then lick the punctures closed. That's all there is to it. As for being remembered, like I mentioned, the kiss is an ecstatic experience, so Kine can barely recall the details. And even when they do, this city is enormous. You could spend days on the street and not see the same face twice. Use that to your advantage. Feeding from the same area repeatedly can be dangerous, but by branching out, you risk the ire of the other kindred, on whose domains you trespass. Lucky for you, New York City is more forgiving in this regard. New York is in somewhat of a unique position. Many of its neighborhoods remain contested or unclaimed. The reason for this is a lesson for another time, but keep the following in mind. Take opportunities to feed when they present themselves. These upcoming nights, as long as you hunt cautiously and respect the masquerade at all times, you should be fine. To wit, I want you to join me for a trip tonight. Come downstairs. Gregory is waiting for us. The busy streets fill the air with traffic noise, pedestrian chatter, and the mix of smells that disorientate you momentarily. These warm bodies contain what you want, what you need. You catch yourself. Did you really just think of these people as mere sources of blood? It takes a nudge from Sophie to break your train of thought. Her driver opened the door for her, and then tips his hat to you, gesturing to the back of the car. The car casually joins the somewhat thin New York traffic. It's still busy in a way only one of the biggest cities in the world can be, but compared to the daytime commute, it's a pleasant drive. You barely have time to gather your thoughts and formulate new questions before the car comes to a stop. You're among the tall skyscrapers that make up Manhattan's iconic skyline. Come, Eric. Park the car, Gregory, will you? The driver just nods and Sophie gets out. You join her, and the two of you walk through the glass doors together. Then take the elevator up. You first notice an empty stage, with the instruments of a string quartet still in the back. Then, taken a few dozen chairs in front of it. The concert seeming concluded, the patrons, already smartly dressed and posh, have spread out over the hall. Sophie strides confidently inside, produces an invitation from her purse that she flashes in front of the security guard. You follow close, and are let through without issue. Let's start easy. A social setting like this one would usually prove quite challenging in an inexperienced kindred. But consider this evening a small gift from your patron. I'm hoping to produce for you a willing vessel. Just remember what I told you about taking small sips. This one I have a soft spot for. Don't damage her. Now, let's see here. Ah, there he is. She notices somebody in the crowd, flashes a heart-melting smile, and suddenly, even you feel drawn to her. You haven't thought about it before, but it's laid clear before you in this moment. Sophie is beautiful. Just looking at her is a privilege. Just being with her makes you feel elated. Everybody in the crowd, but especially the man who almost tripping over himself to reach her, clearly agrees. Edgar! I'm so happy to see you. How's your daughter? Is she with you? Oh, there she is. Julie, my girl, come over here, please. There's somebody I'd like you to meet. The young woman who walks across the hall can't be more than 19 years old. It's clear from her mismatched earrings and partially faded purple hair dye that she doesn't fit this crowd. Julie, this is Eric. I think the two of you should get acquainted while I talk business with your dad. Awfully boring stuff, I assure you. I'm positive you'll like each other. The girl gives you a shy smile and nods towards the balcony stairs. You follow, somewhat unsure what it is exactly Sophie expects you to do. You reach a secluded space from which the entire lobby is visible. All eyes are on Sophie. They listen intently, then laugh when she does. Julie saves you the trouble of figuring out the next step. If you're with Sophie, then I guess you're, that you know. She puts her wrist to her lips and gives herself a theatrical nip, then looks to you, embarrassed, but also hopeful. Yes, I do. She takes off her jacket, unbuttons her sleeve, and then rolls it up. You see a tattoo of a cat in an astronaut suit, one feline eye winking at you. There, just enjoy. A perfectly awkward smile and a blush. The temptation is definitely there, but you can't make yourself do it. She's barely more than a kid. So what if she seems to want it? This is wrong. This is all fucking wrong. She sees you hesitate. She sees your hesitation, but keeps staring at you with pleading eyes. You've seen this look before in some documentary flick, or maybe even on somebody's face. This is a junkie begging for a fix. She breaks into tears and starts shaking. Dejected, she wraps her arms around herself and starts walking down the stairs back to the main hall. You stop her. She looks at you through the tears. You make a motion to take her forearm to your mouth. She whispers to you, "Thank you." You take her forearm in your hand. A quick look around confirms nobody's watching. No security guards cover this area. You bite down gently. It's surreal. She's just giving you her blood of her own volition. How is this possible? What about the masquerade? You need to ask Sophie. Your thoughts disappear amid the bliss. There's just the taste. Sweet, fresh, sanguine. You drink. And drink. And drink. No. Stop. 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 You tear away from the girl. Harder than you wanted. Still, the bite leaves tiny punctures. Almost if by instinct you lick them clean. And the two holes become concealed. Just like that. Julie is now leaning on the wall, pale, wobbly, on her feet, but happy. She lets out a dreamy sigh, opens her eyes, and a few tears fall from her to her shirt. Tears of joy. Thank you. Please, can you walk me downstairs, please? My dad, he doesn't know. Thinks it's a condition. Miss Langley told him so. She leans on you and requests you to walk her over to the bench. She takes a seat and smiles at you. The crowd around Sophie disperses slowly. Looking at her now, only some residual awe hangs in the air. Yes, she's pretty. Maybe even beautiful, sure, but not your type. What came over you before? You walk over to her. Edgar, dear, it was splendid talking to you. But we need to get going. Give Julie my best wishes. Come with, Eric. Gregory is waiting for you out front. It's only in the car that Sophie addresses you. I can tell from your look that you took the opportunity. Good for you. That girl's exquisite, don't you think? You wouldn't tell by her demeanor, but she has so much passion. It brings out a unique bouquet in her blood. I think she knows who we are. It's not normal, right? It's not unusual. That much is true. Or it's not usual. That much is true. But don't worry. She will do anything I tell her to do. And won't say anything to anyone that I haven't put in her pretty head first. Time for the next stop. Training wheels off this time, Gregory. Flushing Meadows, please. The driver takes the car over the Williamsburg Bridge. You settle your thoughts. What do you mean by training wheels? Julie was a proving ground for you to try your hand at controlling feeding. Now it's time for a real hunt, and that will require you to put in extra effort. We all have our talents. Some of them come from the legacy we inherit from our sires. Others can be learned with experience. I can sway people or make them fear me. I see more of the world, and in greater detail than some kindred. I can will my body to move with unparalleled precision and grace, and more. All of these skills make me who I am. They also help me hunt. Okay, so what are my talents? Time will tell. You need to discover them for yourself. When we arrive, experiment. Give different things a try. Follow your instinct and intuition. It will guide the blood. Always keep the masquerade in mind, however. It's all fine if you can disappear in plain sight or command animals with your mind, but save those overt talents for the right place and time. It only takes half an hour to reach the park at the time of night, but you and Sophie leave the car, with Gregory left behind again to find a parking spot and keep an eye on the car. Sophie seems deep in thought. She takes in the surroundings with a dreamy gaze. The sky is surprisingly clear tonight. The stars just barely visible in the light, polluted aura of the city. I feel like having a snack myself. I'll be by the fountain. Go look for somebody to your liking. See what effects you can achieve with your blood. But only pick one victim, just one, then come back. Seeing how she seems not altogether here right now, you decide to leave Sophie to her own devices and seek out your prey. From here, it looks like you have a few choices. Just taking a stroll around the park and finding an isolated jogger or someone like them could work, but focusing on an area might work better. The New York State Pavilion might work as a secluded spot. There's a skate park nearby. In worst case scenario, there's bound to be some unfortunate wino around. Or maybe the tennis courts nearby. There's light coming from there, so somebody might be playing a late night match. They won't be alone. But they might be tired and let their guard down. As these scenarios play out in your mind, you realize you're planning how to assault a stranger in the middle of the night. It's a weird way to be, but the now familiar hunger prompts you to act. You make your way to one of the park's most well-known landmarks, the round skeleton of the New York State Pavilion, with its two vaguely futuristic towers. You don't get lucky with the skate park. It's not deserted. Instead, a group of skaters is gathered there, talking loudly and listening to music playing out crackling smartphone speakers. Deciding to have a quick look around, you decide a potential victim, a sleeping bag lady, leaned back on a bench, a shopping cart full of what looks like trash nearby. One of these might be the right opportunity to take. You creep closer to the filthy, smelly lady on the bench. Her body's barely visible from under the multiple layers of ragged, mismatched garments. She's not a glamorous target, but it seems safe. And safe will have to do tonight. The scent of alcohol mixes with her nasty body odor. You try to ignore it, seeking the warmth of her blood and the promise it keeps. She doesn't get to open her eyes before you strike. Biting her exposed neck, you're struck by melancholy. It's not that you feel guilty about targeting her, though. That too, but there's an unexpected surge of empathy that tastes of her blood provokes. She's probably alone in the city, lost, abandoned by this country's social system, forced to drift from place to place. Her blood is tainted by alcohol and something else. A sickness. You stop drinking. The woman doesn't wake from her stupor. She lets out a deep sigh and starts snoring loudly. That's when you hear the footsteps and turn around to see a figure in the shadow of the pavilion. A hooded man is looking menacingly at you. What do you think you're doing? Barging in on my turf like this, lick? What did you call me? A lick? What's that supposed to mean? Don't be cute with me. I know what you are. Shove that masquerade bullshit up your ass. Better tell me who you're with before my posse shows up and we beat it out of you. I came here with Sophie Langley. She's my patron. Doesn't ring a bell. Sounds fancy, though. He licks his lips, exposing his fangs, and looking at you voraciously. A nervous tick, or an attempt at intimidation. I wonder, what would Callahan do to you if I brought you in? Break your shins? Leave you out to be kissed by the sun? Oh, concrete shoes, maybe? He's old school like that. You take off. Fast. Faster than you've ever run. The hoodlum has trouble keeping up, but howls behind you like an animal and gives chase anyway. As you reach the Unisphere again, you slow down, noticing two people near the sculpture, a man and a woman, tangled in a passionate embrace. No, not exactly. It's Sophie, feeding. But this whole scene is set up so that it looks like a couple getting intimate in public. She pulls it off like she's done it 100 times before. It occurs to you that she probably has. The man is unsure on his feet as she lets go of him and leads him towards a nearby bench. Noticing you, she whispers something in his ear and leaves him. Her driver appears behind a tree. Well, Eric, how did it go? You're about to answer when the same figure as before emerges from one of the alleys. He looks at the three of you. Predatory smile creeps onto his lips. You thought you could run away from me, Lick? Think you'll be safe with your friends? Well, I have friends too. He makes a motion to shout, but two things happen almost at the same time. First, that feeling of warmth and beauty emanating from Sophie flares up again, entrancing both of you. You and the hooded thug. His shout comes out as a weak, confused squeak. Second, Gregory produces a wooden stake from a holster under his jacket and slams it into the thug's chest. Just like that, in a few seconds, the posturing vampire is down on the ground, paralyzed. I see you've made a friend, Eric. Curious choice of company, I would say. Who is he? He said this was his turf and that I was trespassing on it. I thought this place was supposed to be safe. Well, He's not part of the Camarilla. Corona Park hasn't been claimed by anyone I know of. Curious. Let's go to the car. We'll put him in the trunk and present him to Kadir tomorrow night. I'm sure he'll be delighted to make this hoodlum's acquaintance. Gregory carries the staked vampire and dumps him in the car's trunk like a mannequin. The sight gives you a sudden urge to touch your own chest as you remember being treated the same by Kadir. The gaping wound that was there just last night is now almost gone. Just a tender, scar tissue-like spot, marked with what was a hole in your sternum. It's still a strange realization as the last time. It's almost surprising that you can get away with just casually throwing a stiff in your car and driving away. But then you remember that Sophie has been doing this far longer than you have. Still, the nagging thought that anything you did tonight could have been recorded on a CCTV camera or picked up by a rando with a half-decent smartphone streamed online fills you with dread. Hunting and using your abilities is a dangerous business. It's clear that this whole being a vampire thing has about as many caveats as it has perks. You've taken out your headspace by Sophie's voice. I will pick you up tomorrow night, same as tonight. I have some business to attend to at Elysium, and I expect you to accompany me. Plus, our friend in the back needs to be properly introduced to Kadir and the prince. I'm sure he'll have some interesting things to say to the court. Her voice is cold, cruel, and nothing like the enchanting personalities she showed at the gallery earlier tonight. Sophie is clearly a woman of many faces. What's going to happen to him? The usual, I imagine. Interrogation by Kadir, probably in the basement of the gallery. A quick trial with the prince in attendance, if she's there tomorrow night. A swift execution as the verdict. This all sounds eerily familiar to you, and you can't help but feel a pang of guilt when you think about what awaits this guy tomorrow night. You haven't told me how your hunting went. Getting the hang of it, I would hope. I think I am, yeah. I'll cope. I'm glad. She doesn't question you further. She seems distracted, not all there. Her thoughts drift and the car remains silent until you reach your apartment. We will pick you up tomorrow evening. Good night. Just like that. Without further courtesy, Sophie leaves, driven to her apartment by Gregory, with a body in the trunk, right in the middle of Manhattan. Did you cross paths with situations like these in your past, unknowingly? What other secrets did you pass on the streets without knowing their true nature? Your haven is just as you left it hours ago. Although the sun won't come up for some time, you feel tired. You learned something about yourself today, and it'll take time to process. You're not in the mood for television, and the few books on the shelves in her apartment are either in languages you don't speak or sound like a really boring read. Nothing left to do but rest. You settle in the back room, lock the door. A moment of hesitation, but then a decision. This time, you turn the light off. You think back to Julie. How many people in this city know about this vampiric society? How many are willing accomplices in sustaining it? And the thug you met in the park. If he's not Camarilla, then what is he? Are there independent vampires? How does that work? More questions. You begin wondering if there's ever going to be a night when you can start crossing them off your list instead of adding to it. You close your eyes. You sink into the now familiar void of nothingness. It greets you with open arms, like an old friend. Alrighty. Well, day 2 was fun. Shorter than last time. Let's take a look at our unread. We have the kiss. An act of drinking blood, usually from a mortal. The kiss causes feelings of ecstasy in those who receive it. Domain. The area of a particular vampire's influence. Princes claim entire cities as their domain, sometimes allowing lesser vampires to claim domain within. Lick. A derogatory term, usually used to address young, unexperienced vampires. Court. The social system of a city's kindred, resembling the futile systems of mortals. At the top is the prince, below them the members of the Primogen Council. Order in the domain is maintained by a sheriff. The gatherings are organized in secret sanctuary known as Elysiums. The haven, a vampire's home or base, where they find sanctuary from the sun. Well, as we are going to be going at this one night at a time, I believe, I think I am done for right now. I hope you all have a very good evening, and I hope that you are enjoying this as much as I am. Thank you very much for joining me. I am Voivode Maquette. Please drop comments. I love reading them. Subscribe if you're enjoying listening to the dulcet tones of my voice stumble through these words. And of course, if you think anybody might enjoy what you're hearing right now, share. I will see you next time in our world of darkness. Good evening.